This piece that I want to talk about is called Your 8-year-old's Driving Your Car. And it's just a metaphor that I've come to over 25, 30 years of playing with people, and what I've learned with just trying to get people to look at the psychology of life and our experience of it. So where the 8-year-old part comes from is that science, psychology, says that all of the programs by which you're going to interpret the rest of your life are cast in stone by the time you're 8 years old. So the way I look at that is just to say that when your 8-year-old, that the programs that are cast in stone by the time you're 8, your 8-year-old sitting in the front seat of your car and is driving your car, and life experiences are coming through the windshield of your car, and your 8-year-old is trying to make the best out of all those experiences by driving your car in such a way. So you probably are also familiar with the name persona, with the idea of a persona. But actually a persona originally 5,000 years ago in Greek theater was a stick with a mask on it. And in fact, actors back in those days had maybe 4 or 5 sticks and masks with them. So they were holding one of them in front of them. They didn't wear costumes so much, and they had 3 or 4 sticks and masks behind them so they could play multiple parts in the play. So in psychology, we talk about these personas as being different sticks and masks that we present to the other people around us at different times in our lives, depending on the circumstance. So for instance, a child probably has 2 or 3 personas for dealing with their family, with their nuclear family, because that's where the most emotional, dangerous things are going on in life for most people. But they also have a stick and a mask for going to school when they're with their schoolmates. They have a stick and a mask for when they're with a person of the opposite sex, because there's a whole different decorum that's going on there. They have a stick and a mask for if they're going to church. Then they have another stick and a mask that they have to carry on when they're in a religious setting. What I want to say is that all of these sticks and masks, these personas that get formed, are formed out of fear. That when an 8-year-old experiences this thing, and remember we're talking from 2.5 years old, when you get pulled up out of the sandbox and you get quote-unquote adulterated by your parents and your teachers and your ministers and whoever else is in your life, those people are, in a sense, trying to make you bulletproof from our culture, so they feel like they have to teach you to be afraid of it, you should be afraid of this, you should be afraid of that. And most of us, of course, were raised totally on conditional love. I will love you more if you cut your hair the right way. I'll love you more if you get better grades. I'll love you more if you wear the right clothes. I'll love you more if you practice the right religion, blah, 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 blah. So we are, as it goes, raised in this culture where we're fear controlled. And how we end up developing personas is that when you do something and maybe one of your parents overreacts to it and gives you a real emphatic no, and just a little parenthetical on no's, they're saying now that most 10-year-olds have heard 12,000 emphatic emotional no's in their life. I'm not talking about just no, I'm talking about no, don't do that. I'm talking about a really emotional no. Kids just get bombed with that stuff. So let's say that you do something and your parent slaps you or hits you because of what you've done, then there is an emotional wound. Think about a child has absolutely no background of experience to compare being hurt by their parent with anything else. So the whole dance is about how do I, being hurt emotionally the first time, how do I survive the next time? And so what I do is I very cleverly create a persona, a stick and a mask that I can hold up in front of me, which protects me from being wounded again, from being hurt again when that same thing happens again. So let's look at the stick and a mask just as an emotional thing. The stick and the mask are my boundary. So if you are not observing my boundary, let's say that you're just being a real jerk and you're coming past where I feel comfortable with you on this emotional level, then what do I usually do when you come up to my boundary? I usually start getting angry. I'm telling you with my anger to get back, and if you go back, if you behave and do what I want you to do, then I'm fine again. I'm neutral again. If on the other hand you come through my anger and you don't listen to my anger and you violate my territory and I feel very uncomfortable, then I say, what? I've tried to fight and now I go flight. Fight or flight, the oldest thing in psychology. I don't necessarily run away physically. Most of the time I run away emotionally. I just don't. I'm saying to myself, I don't care what you do, you're not getting to me, you're not going to bother me. I'm emotionally making myself unavailable. So we have a stick and a mask, we have fight, we have flight. At the base of every stick and mask, where this stick and mask is created, at the base of every one of them is a wound. The only reason why you create this defense, this personality of defense, is to protect you from getting wounded again like you did the first 2 or 3 times that forced you to create this stick and a mask. So when I first had my shamanic awakening and my power animals were talking me into getting into this idea of looking at my personas, I identified 13 different personas that I had, and I started using, I even named those personas. So I had a persona called Perfect Avoider. I had another blah, 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 blah. The idea of being open to your personas is that you cannot change anything. You can never change anything until you have an awareness of why you are reacting the way you're reacting. So my advice and my paradigm to try and encourage you is to have your adult sit in the front seat with your 8-year-old. So your adult sitting in the front seat and your 8-year-old is sitting on the lap of your adult. Your 8-year-old, trust me, is always going to drive your car. But I have had just literally hundreds of clients come to me and say, Marshall, you got to stop me from doing this to myself. I've been in the same horrendous emotional train wreck 5 times in the last 8 years over having the same kind of relationship with different women. Why am I always driving into this bridge abutment at 80 miles an hour? It's very painful. I don't like doing it. Why do I keep doing it? And my answer is because your adult's sitting in the back seat and is clueless as to why your 8-year-old's driving the car the way it's driving. So, what can the adult do if it's sitting in the front seat but the 8-year-old's still driving? The 8-year-old has the gas pedal, the 8-year-old has the steering wheel, the 8-year-old doesn't have the brake, the adult has the brake. So once you have some awareness of why your 8-year-old is reacting to something coming through your windshield now because it's reacting the same way it did as a child, if you want to change that behavior, then you can call timeout. The adult can put on the brake. And then no matter how much the 8-year-old tries to steer or how much it tries to go fast, it cannot change the direction or the speed of the car. And you can then sit down with your 8-year-old and try and have some conversations about how to change this behavior. And that's the key to it, is just changing a little bit at a time we can change that behavior. So, the only thing that I could say about that in a long-term sense is keep trying to identify when your 8-year-old is reacting to an event in your life that's not what you want to do. It's not what you want to create. And I can really say 2 things about that. One, your 8-year-old has made no mistakes. Your 8-year-old, don't try and mother your 8-year-old, and don't try and tell your 8-year-old that it's not a perfectly good person, because it is. And the fact is, it's a miracle that you survived your childhood. Second of all, though, you can have the conversation with your 8-year-old, and I would suggest giving your 8-year-old a name different from your adult name, or some people switch it around. I would just make sure that name's not a negative nickname, not pejorative at all, that it's a name that makes you feel good. The name of my 8-year-old is Marshmallow. That feels good to me because some people, my parents and my grandparents used to call me that name. So what I would suggest is that you can use the relationship between you and your 8-year-old so that you can start changing some of your behaviors. Let me give you one typical example of an 8-year-old, and that persona is many people in our culture are overweight. And what a 4 or a 5-year-old learns at the dinner table in the family, where there's usually the most kind of politics going on, and there's lots of things going on emotionally for a child. Remember one really important thing. A child has a worldview that they're responsible for everything that's happening in their nuclear family. So if there's arguments going on or there's discord going on within the family, the 8-year-old is trying to figure out a way, because they feel responsible to make this okay for everybody. So one of the things the 8-year-olds learn when they're 4 or 5 maybe, is they learn that if they eat too much, all of their blood goes to their stomach and it numbs them down emotionally. So then the 8-year-old ends up being numb at the dinner table. And this numbness is just like smoking is for a lot of people when they get older. It's just a way for them to drop out of this emotional context and be free of it. Well, that emotional context then that's developed, this persona that's developed that says, man, if I overeat, then I'm really feeling okay because nothing bothers me as much. My wound is protected when I overeat. Some people, likewise, you might look at some people who go through abuse, go through a physical abuse. If the physical abuse is based on them feeling like they are attractive, then a lot of people will end up being overeaters and doing things differently to try and change their appearance, because then they feel like they won't be as attractive to this abuse. So I think when you look at your personas and you talk to your 8-year-old, you're going to find out there's very, very good reasons for all of them to exist. And my point of view is to just form a partnership with your 8-year-old. If you try and aspire to change your behavior slowly but surely will begin to change. And that's when I refer the rest of these theories about your 8-year-old driving your car. Now, hopefully you got a good idea what we're talking about. Peace out.